slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now.
Parents, by the way, were very fanatical in favor of apartheid. This is quite interesting. Her parents came to South Africa from Canada because they sympathized with the Afrikaner government. Her parents, by the way, were very fanatical in favor of apartheid. This is quite interesting. Her parents came to South Africa from Canada because they sympathized with the Afrikaner government.
Okay.
They used to support Hitler and all that sort of stuff. But they didn't know, obviously, I don't think they knew what the Nazis were doing. But they in Canada, they were in the German party in Canada, and they sympathized with the Germans.
Yeah.
You believe President Trump is a racist?
Yeah, no question.
How can you say that?
When you look at the words that he uses, which are historic dog whistles of white supremacy, when you look at how he reacted to the Charlottesville incident where neo-Nazis murdered a woman versus how he manufactures crises like immigrants seeking legal refuge on our borders, it's night and day.
Why is it only the Latin Americans? You know what I mean? Why is it not the Australians? You know how many Australians I know that live here and actually take your jobs?
There are approximately 600,000 undocumented immigrants from Europe in the United States. How come we're not seeing them being rounded up? Is it because they're white and not brown or black?
And why are we only targeting Latino immigrants? Is Asian immigrants, black immigrants, white immigrants, European, dare I say, you know?
I was an illegal immigrant in the United States of America, but because of the color of my skin and the color of my hair and who I am, I have never been questioned. I have never been questioned about whether I'm American. No one has ever said, do you speak English? Because they didn't assume that I couldn't because of being an immigrant. I am an immigrant in your country.
Remember.
The patriarchy's dying. But there's no two ways about it that what's going on in this country right now is beyond insanity. Just say, I find comfort in this fact, like that this is, in fact, the last gasp breath of the white male patriarchy. And it is, in fact, so chaotic and insane because they're so desperate to cling to this ideology. Like, the saying goes, what? It's always darkest before the dawn, right? And, like, I think that that's the case right now. And it's been going that way for a while. We've been on this route for a while. And just because they managed to scheme their way through the last election does not mean that they have any type of fucking mandate when it comes to all this terrible crap that they want to do.
Never forget that white Christian men, the patriarchy that controlled this country, are on their last gasp. No matter what, as the saying goes, you can't stop progress. You can try, you can fight it, you can try to legislate it out of existence, you can ignore it, but it will eventually come back. The white patriarchy in this country is slowly dying out. That's why they're lashing out so hard and trying to forcefully take control of everything. And the more we push back, the less they're going to be able to accomplish, which gives them even more time to slowly die out and their ideology to go down the toilet.
If you had to guess what percentage of the global population is white, what would you guess? And if you've been hanging out in these spaces for a while, you might already know. But this was brand new information to me as of yesterday. Okay, I'll give you one more second. Would you have guessed 7%? 7%. What? I'm talking to another friend about this, and we're just pissed. We're like, why am I 40 plus years old and just learning of this? Like, yet another example of something so simple that could have been taught in school, and it just wasn't. It's just not, but still, that's not even the point of my video yet. I learned that fact from TikTok yesterday, as so many of us learn so many of our history facts, right? And I just threw it up in a story on Instagram, rather flippantly. I'm usually really committed to doing at least just a brief, quick fact check of stuff that I share, but I didn't do that with this. Just threw it up in a story quick. Asked people, yeah, whatever. So I was revisiting it today, and I thought, I probably should have at least done a quick search of that just to make sure that is, in fact, accurate. Which I did. So I went to look it up, and here's my point. It is, in fact, 7%. That's true. But it took me a minute to find it. I had to dig for it. Like, that should be something so easy to just do a quick, my hair. That should be something so easy to just do a quick Google search for, and boom, it just pop up, 7%. It's not. And that's very troubling to me, because it's just yet another example of how much information is controlled and withheld. And if we're not looking for it, and if we're not tuned in, we would have no idea. It's fucking diabolical.
So y'all remember that census article that came out like in late 2019, just before 2020 it started, saying that by 2050, the population of the United States, about like half of it was going to be mixed race. And essentially that's why all these Republicans are going on a whole rampage of trying to keep, the whiteness alive. Well, essentially Gen Z will be the last generation with majority, white in the US. So even if they tried for the future, they're like, damn, that's it. According to a new study, Gen Z Americans will give way to a post-2012 majority minority generation Alpha. So Gen Alpha is essentially going to be, the next ones that are going to be representing the new population of America. And honestly, it's not surprising. We have full discussions on here all the time about people popping up with biracial babies, hoping they will look like the daddy, but they don't. Also, the quote tweet that I found this is just, wow. Generation Alpha is the best name for the first majority BIPOC generation in the United States. We love to see it. And I know the Republicans are fuming, so I don't know if I should be laughing at that or I should be very, very scared, because they are just running a rampage.
Something my grandma told me that has always stuck with me. My grandma is white. She grew up on a plantation. She would be nearing 100 years old today, but she passed away sadly. I miss her so much. But she would always tell me these stories, things that I felt like being a biracial person shouldn't really know about. Like there's certain things that I think racists kind of keep to themselves, and I was able to hear these things. She told me that when she was a young girl, she remembers a very wealthy man coming to their plantation and telling them that they were worried that there weren't enough white babies being born. Blonde hair, blue-eyed white babies. Like they wanted pure white babies. He told them that he would check in periodically, and the family, after 5 years, to have the most blonde hair, blue-eyed white babies would win prize money. There were about 12 babies born. So many babies were born. So they didn't actually win the prize money, though. The prize money went to another family. I always wondered who that person was and what the outcome was. Like how many.
They were called the Better Baby Contest or the Fitter Family Contest, where they looked at your entire family to see if you were good stock. And these contests directly inspired Nazism in Germany. Let's get started and learn something new. Let's take it on back to the early 1900s. Before these contests started happening in the 1920s, there was an issue happening in the United States. Approximately 100 infants of every 1,000 live births died before their first birthday. Created a social awareness of child health, making sure they had better access to doctors, making sure they had better hygiene, making sure they had proper nutrition, which inspired a conference that was hosted by President Theodore Roosevelt. Then in 1912, a children's bureau that addressed all of these needs. But that's when eugenists got involved, and it got a little crazy. That's the early 1900s. Eugenicists, you already know, they wanted the strongest, healthiest, whitest, blue-eyedest people to be reproducing, and of course the feeble-minded and the other less viable people should not be having children. And this concept wasn't crazy back then. Nobody had a problem with it. Even President Roosevelt wrote a letter to Charles Davenport, the director of the Eugenics Record Office, and he said that our society permits unlimited breeding from the worst stock. I knew that these contests would be super popular. They're super popular to this day. Baby contests, family contests. So they just knew that this would work because they could put it under the guise of they're just trying to better the babies, make sure the babies are healthy, make sure they don't pass away under the age of 1 year old, make sure that they have their nutrition, their hygiene, access to doctors. But we're also going to sprinkle just a little bit of eugenics in there. As images of healthy babies popped up in newspapers around the country because of these contests, they realized you can popularize eugenics and ideas about inheritance by building on this model. And of course, these eugenicists had extensive research projects. So this data that they were getting from these contests from hundreds of families, a eugenicist's dream, okay? Now, while seemingly benign, contests like these reinforce the notion of white Americans having the most desirable characteristics, white and preferably with blue blue eyes, and implicitly discouraged the inclusion of people who fell outside that range. By setting scorecards and standards, the contest organizers put forth a hierarchy of humans. Can't fit everything in this video, so I'm going to put a link in the comments for a PBS documentary that talks about this. It's about 30 minutes long. Please watch it. I promise you'll learn something new. Now, judging these babies morphed into a eugenically driven judgment of the families, and that's when fitter families came along. And public acceptance of these concepts would also pave the way for national level changes. The Immigration Act of 1924 that restricted the number of foreigners who could enter the United States. They said America must remain American. And then in 1927, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the principle of sterilization of certain defective persons by the state. Sums up everything perfectly. This system of beliefs reached full flower in the camps of Yahtzee, Germany, and seeing its earlier stages in the wholesome setting of Midwestern state fairs with folding chairs under the shade trees and the science fair quality of the displays is creepy in a way that few things are. I hope you learned something new and watch that documentary.